Judy Alvarez. I let go of the wire at the exact moment it started flinging me up. Instead of being flung up into the ceiling of the pathway, it launched me across and I just managed to slam my boots into the floor to send me tumbling out the other end of the path, through the open window and into nothing. Air. Nothing but air. Instantly Judy slammed the cancel code into the console and threw herself out of the BD, rolling off her chair and grabbing for the trash can. She panted, every inch of her body shivering and sweating. She had already ripped off most of her clothes just so she could cool down. Fuck that kid. Fuck. Fuck fuck. She moaned into the trash can, but thankfully she didn't actually pop. Free from the sensation of falling with nothing to catch her, she managed to slowly regain her breath. She had finished editing the BD for the most part, but she couldn't actually get all the way through it to call it done. It was heights. Why did it have to be heights? She moaned as she stood up on shaky legs, grabbing a can of something with more caffeine than healthy and popped it, then chugged it down. Damn Judes. You alright? She didn't quite freeze, but she did jerk a bit at the voice looking over at the one that got her into this. Knox. This is all your fault. You introduced me to that little. She growled, clenching and unclenching her fists at him as if she was going to throttle him, or her. Well, it would be him. Judy had long realized that Motoko wasn't in her league. Out of shape, nerd that spends all her days in a BD is not comparable to a teenage cyberpunk super assassin. She was still secretly putting money on the girl being some corpo experiment. Hey, don't blame me, he whined, shoulders slumped. I'm not even in charge anymore. Fucking corpo bye. He cut himself off and looked around as if expecting the girl in question to appear, before relaxing and continuing. Bitch. I don't want to hear you whining. I've already offered to speak to Ritu about it. No. She's a turbo-rusty lady, but I can't. I'm making more in profits now than I was before, despite her taking her cut. He grumbled, retracing common ground. One of Motoko's friends had muscled in on Knox's hustle, and had taken over. Knox was pissy about it, but the look on his face whenever the eddies he was making were brought up always shut him up. Don't insult people with Midnight Lady. Rita will fuck you up if she hears you say that. Judy reminded the boy and he scoffed, but did a mumbled half apology under his breath. So, Motoko's new BD causing you trouble? She texted me that she had dropped off another one. I'm not good with heights, Knox, and that's all this one is. Fuck. She hissed as she bounced a bit just to remind her brain what body she was in. BD skewing was something she had long since learned to cope with. Preem. Is it done? It should be, but I can't finish it without feeling like I'm going to pop. She complained, throwing a hand at the headset. Jump in, I'll use you as a test dummy. This one is just heights, not like the only thing, right? He asked, hesitating. Judy shivered. I told you not to ever remind me about that. No. It's like parkour stuff. She's just a psycho. Preem. He called out, jumping onto the chair and pulling up the wreath. A moment later he was in, and Judy walked over to her desk to track the program, watching the information it was sending her, for dangerous highs or lows. Unlike her, Knox handled it just fine, and in the end he jerked upright, hand grasping for something as the BD ended. Whoa! He muttered, eyes wide, as he slowly came back to his own body. That was intense. Jude. We got another preem experience on our hands. Yeah. She muttered. Motoko hadn't given her much to work with in a while. Judy had honestly been relieved it wasn't another massacre BD. Any issues? Nah, it felt smooth as anything. Alright. I'm not seeing any issues either. Thanks for taking over. She offered the boy, who just smirked. Well, it's my future merch. Got to experience it to sell, even Hiromi thinks so. Preem. Alright. Go ahead and take a copy, I'm taking a break, she said, grabbing a cig and gathering up her clothes. She was still half naked after all. She was pretty uncaring, but it's not like was going to walk around topside without wearing a bit more. Where you going? Judy stilled as she took a puff of her cig and then glared at nothing. I kinda want ramen, she explained, and Knox's eyes grew large as it stirred something in him too. Yeah. Sakura Market it was. Dash. This is boring. Malcolm muttered. We were all lying in different places around the room, eating snacks, or in Hiromi's case playing that game on her tablet. Ichi had even found a TV and brought it down. With my help we had access to the building's TV channels, and so he was camped out watching that. It's just a waiting game now, Malcolm. Once they respond we will have them. I'm still bored. He grumbled and I couldn't help but chuckle at his whining. He had claimed responsibility for getting the message, but I guess it was bothering him as he kept checking his agent over and over for a response. Yeah, I'm bored too, I offered, standing up from where I had been sprawled over my netrunner chair. Anyway, want some food or something? I want to stretch my legs. I'll come with. Malcolm offered to my surprise as he stood up, and I could see Ichi sit up at that, wanting to deny him, but after a moment he didn't. Be careful, Ichi called out instead, and Malcolm just waved his hand. We went into the elevator and thankfully Malcolm was walking without pain as we left the apartment and walked down the sidewalk. You know, we might not hear from them for a few days. Or more. They will likely stay in hiding for a while. I know. He grumbled and I nodded at that, as I stretched my arms up to the sky. You gonna be okay? I'll live, he offered with a bit of grump. Thanks again, Motoko, for saving my ass, he said suddenly, and I couldn't help but flash back to that day. You scared the fuck out of me, I answered instead. I caught the wince out of the corner of my eye. Obviously it wasn't the first time he had heard that. Yeah, my dad said that too. Why'd you go alone? Something big like that? That's a lot of eddies to throw around without backup. I asked the question I had been sitting on since it all happened. He was quiet for a long while as we walked down the road toward the diner. I just wanted to do something myself, I guess. I had my iron. I thought I could handle it. He finally replied after a while, and I frowned. That was a tough statement to reply to. I reached over and slipped my arm in with his own to his surprise. We all make mistakes, and sometimes have to suffer the scars for them, I offered, squeezing his bicep with my chrome fingers. My mistake led me to losing my arms. Malcolm's almost cost him his life. So we learn from them. I don't go anywhere without firepower to handle a Borg. And I kept improving. My netrunning stuff helps a lot. I'm not like a weird super ninja like you are, Motoko, Malcolm offered, sounding down. You don't have to be. Motoko is a super ninja cause it's what Motoko wants, I said in third person for my own amusement. So what does Malcolm want? I want to be something more than just some kid. I wanted to be. He didn't say it, but I could understand. He wanted to be what every Night City kid wanted. To be an edge runner, a street samurai, a gang leader. He wanted to prove he mattered. Well, that's easy then, I offered, pulling free and walking ahead and then walking backwards just because. You can very easily stop being a kid, Malcolm. Just live. Then I turned around and continued walking. Hey. I heard a chuckle from Malcolm that was half exasperation. What do I want? Be a cool merc. Make money. I wanted to stamp out the whole scav thing. Stupid standalone complexes. Then, I had to laugh to myself. I just wanted to enjoy my life. Whatever that meant. This was my second life, and I had been letting it drag me down. Letting the dark nasty parts focus too much of my attention. It was getting late. Even with the dinner I had brought in, everyone was crashing, and Malcolm was getting ready to head home to get some sleep and be ready for Vic's meeting in the morning. I had been trawling through the net a bit, mostly just checking on some scav locations I had been sent by some netrunners when I got the message from Ichi. Motoko, come out. They responded. I quickly disconnected, coming back to myself in just a few moments before pulling myself free of the netchair. What did they say? That they definitely have a Mizuton Ishion that they can sell us. Malcolm called and I rushed over to check the laptop he had been working on. The response was exactly what we had expected. A confirmation they had what we wanted, the price, and some pictures that, since I had seen their other messages they used, I knew were ones they had used before while selling Ishion. Somehow they just kept selling the same car. How lucky. I scoffed at the request but patted Malcolm on the shoulder. Set up the meeting. But make sure it's after your visit with Vic in the morning. Wouldn't want to miss out on the fun, would you? I asked, and Malcolm shook his head with a glare, as he slowly started tapping out a message back. Dash. The next afternoon we were ready. Malcolm was declared completely healed from Vic, and we had set up the time for the car traders to show up. To my amusement, they had picked the same spot they had ambushed Malcolm at from before. I guess they figured they were in the clear. So I had shown up in the morning while Malcolm was getting checked out, and prepped everything. Considering I had already searched around the area, it hadn't been hard to find a good place to settle in. I had picked an empty apartment that had a balcony looking over the inner courtyard on the second floor. Nekomata was resting against the old concrete and I was looking through multiple camera systems in the area waiting. The ambush was set. Hiromi was our bait this time. She had, to my amusement, pulled a bunch of her TC stuff out of the closet and had gone from corpo student with an edge to full TC fangirl in an hour of prep. Only the black chrome that all matched hinted at her connections. The meeting time came and went and we were waiting. I could see Hiromi getting impatient, and through the conference call that all of us were part of I was hearing the anxiety building. Do you think they bailed? They wouldn't, right? We didn't give them any reason to think this is a trap. Malcolm's voice came through, irritated from where he was sitting in the back of Ichi's van that was parked around the corner in front of a shop as if Ichi was just grabbing a meal. Might just be traffic, or they might just be late. They aren't exactly intending to be reliable, you know? Ichi added. Relax guys. Just relax. They'll show. And even if they don't, it just means we hunt them some more. I added into the line calmly. Thanks to Cool, I was more than content just waiting for them to show. Yeah, but what if they don't? Malcolm, relax already. I'm the one out in the open. Hiromi added, and then I saw it. A camera from down the street. Showtime. I called out and the line went quiet as I watched through nearby cameras as the Archer heli that the fuckers drove pulled up to the same spot they had parked when they attacked Malcolm. 4 gonks climbed out. All of them checking pistols, which were then stuffed into waistbands, just to hit the cliché of being a shit-tier gangster all the more. Temptation to just start shooting them through the walls right away rose, but this was for Malcolm, not my personal satisfaction. They walked down the alley and then into the courtyard, noticing Hiromi as she was casually sitting on a concrete bench already facing where they would come. Nice work, Hiromi. Very corpo queen. You were late. She called out loudly enough for me to hear, and I could see the brash gangster's hackles rise up at the tone. But this time Hiromi wasn't needing to modulate herself, or pretend. She knew what was coming. I stood up, still out of sight of these blind morons. Nekomata pointed down at them. Of course I had already thrown a weapon glitch at them as they were walking through the alleyway. Ichi and Malcolm would be driving the van right into the alley, just to make sure no one could run. Not that I would let them. Kinda hard to run blind, and if something did go wrong, a nice reboot optics would handle them just fine. Just a bit of traffic, I'm sure you understand. One of the gangsters spoke up. So that was him. Aiden Michaels. The nephew of some 6th Saint higher up. He was also the leader of this little troop. The fucker with his slicked back hair and expensive clothes. He looked like every rich kid I had ever met. Idly my Nekomata's crosshair inched over the back of his head. Sure. Where's the car? Hiromi demanded after a moment, sounding so sarcastic even the gangers couldn't have missed it. See, there's a bit of an issue. I'm sure you can understand. We'll need a down payment. He nodded and his gonks suddenly stepped around Hiromi, looming over her. Yeah, I expected as much. Mr. Michaels. You are far too predictable. Hiromi added, without showing an inch of fear as she tapped away on her knee as if she was bored. I'm afraid this meeting is no longer one you have any control of. Hiromi added, and suddenly there must have been that tiny hint in the brains of the gangers that something was wrong. The you talking about, you little bitch, you think? No, Mr. Michaels, it's you who doesn't think. Hiromi cut him off, sounding honestly angry. You believed Mr. Wells, who we hired, was our only attempt to ferret you out. That we knew you would go to ground the moment he showed up. It was all a setup to make you think you were safe so we can bring you right out into the open. I'm not the type of woman to spend time hunting scum like you down. Aiden pulled his gun. A Unity that had some respectable amount of care put into it. But Hiromi didn't even blink when he pulled, aimed, and fired. The only sound was a faint clink that I couldn't make out from here. If you would be so kind, she asked aloud. I fired. Aiden's arm disappeared at the forearm. Nekomata roared for a second and the screams started up right after. All four of the gangsters suddenly realized they were in trouble. Two instantly ran, and the third made to grab Aiden to try and pull him away. Ichi and Malcolm were there already, the van blocking the path at the end of the alleyway, having reversed up to it. And Malcolm standing at the entrance. Malcolm of course wasn't unarmed. His tactician fired, causing the first runner to literally stop cold as he slammed into the floor dying. The second one had his leg blown off a moment later. Malcolm was obviously pretty angry about the whole nearly killing him thing. You cunt. You blew off my fucking arm. Aiden was whining and screaming as his tune pulled him to his feet, but a second retort echoed out. I matched Malcolm. The third tune lost the leg at the knee. His screams intertwined with the others, and suddenly we had three disabled fuckheads to sort out. Malcolm was still marching towards Aiden with a certain look in his eye, and I wasn't going to stop him. I leapt off the balcony and landed with a nearly silent thump as I sauntered over to Hiromi, who I could tell was feeling a bit jittery with all the blood splattered around her. But she was handling herself really well. I settled beside her, nudging her just a bit with my hips so she knew she was safe. Malcolm walked up to the cussing gangster and instantly smashed the butt of his shotgun into his face. Then he kept doing it. Jesus Malcolm, did you watch The Only Thing They Fear Is You? Wait. What? Aiden cried out after a few hits, his cussing turned into pleading. To my surprise Malcolm did just that. Letting the man talk. My uncle. He's powerful. A leader in 6th Street if you kill me. Aiden Michaels. Do you really think we didn't know that before we came here? Hiromi offered with a half-amused half-disappointed smirk on her face. Do you think we didn't already delete ourselves from the cameras? Cover our tracks? Aiden, your uncle will never know who flatlined his gonged nephew. Hiromi's cold statement made the fucker seem to realize just how fucked he was. Malcolm took that as his cue and smashed his shotgun into the guy's face again just to prove his point. The guy tried to struggle against him, but with one arm missing his struggles pretty quickly slowed down. Too weak to really fight back as Malcolm let out his built-up pain by bashing the guy's face in. Yeah, I know that feel. I walked around instead. Nekomata just held to my chest as I pulled out my Lexington. The gunshots were loud as I double-tapped the other two moaning bodies. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. Level up achieved. 1 stat point gained. 1 skill point gained. I blinked and then smiled happily as the alert came in. How cool. I hadn't even realized how close to a level up I was. I was now level 15. Settling in beside Hiromi, who hadn't moved from her spot, I waved to Ichi, who had casually walked down the alleyway to join us. As our entire group watched on as Malcolm continued to beat Aiden Michaels to death. Which had always sort of been the plan. To kill him, I mean. Not beat him to death, but sometimes a message needed to be sent. Hey, you know what this means? I asked the group suddenly as they all looked at me. Congratulations, Malcolm. You have a slightly used Archer Hella. Congratulations, I said, clapping at him. Hiromi, seeing that I was up to something, joined in and clapped for Malcolm as well. It took a second for Ichi to join in, but his sarcastic clapping made it all the better. I fucking hate all of you. Why are we even chums? Malcolm asked as he wiped his face a bit of some of the extra blood, although he was barely holding back his laughter. 'Cause you love us. Now don't forget to grab the key shard out of him. Unless you want me to just hotwire your new car. I don't even want a Hella. He grumbled, but did as I prompted, pulling the blood-covered shard out of Aiden's neck after a bit of finagling, then wiped it off on his shirt for a few moments to try and clean it up. We split up after that. Malcolm went to paint and re-register his new car since he didn't want someone in 6th Saint to be able to track it. Thankfully Hella were really common, and with just that, it would be just another Hella on the road. Although we were all going to meet up later. Rockaboy Neighbor's music act was tonight. It was finally time to scope out the competition so I could destroy her. So I could see what other Rockaboys got up to in Night City. So this is the place? Doesn't look like much. Why don't we just go to Lizzie's? Ichi asked, and I think all three of us stopped to look at him at that admittedly telling request. Ichi started to explain, but the way his eyes widened at all of us looking at him showed that he realized what he had just admitted to. Never mind. Always nice to check out new clubs. Come on. He called out as he quickly power-walked ahead of us. Hiromi and I both broke into quiet giggles at the tension in Ichi's gait, while Malcolm just shook his head while smiling and went to catch up. You couldn't even tell Malcolm had been shot earlier in the week. He moved without any sign of pain or issue. Cyberpunk medicine was so crazy. The name is kinda bad though. Think they are riffing off the afterlife? Hiromi asked, and I nodded. As we both looked up to the club's neon sign above the dingy door in an alleyway in the middle of Watson. Yumi. That's kinda lame. I agreed as I ended up shrugging. It wasn't like I was here for the club itself. I was here to gather information. I pulled Hiromi along as we slipped into the entrance and found there was a little lobby, with a woman behind the counter. Ichi and Malcolm were at the front desk apparently paying for their entrance fee. Geez Motoko. This place is expensive. Malcolm whined to me as I walked up and looked at the numbers listed out and had to agree. Most of the clubs we went to were BD bars, where the entrance was free, but they expected you to buy overpriced drinks. This was more like a concert hall. To get in you had to pay a fee, and then the drinks and stuff would also be outrageously expensive. I rolled my eyes. Entrance for 4. I informed the pretty saleswoman at the desk. The fact she was wearing an old-school punk rock style was pretty cool. You got it. And then we were waved through. Down a set of barely lit stairs and into a large room. It was similar to most clubs I had been into, a stage straight across from the entrance, and booths all along the edges, with a dance floor in front of the stage. Up on the stage there wasn't a live band, but the large screen showed a previous live show that was pretty good. We ended up wandering around trying to find a booth, but all of them were taken. Mostly filled with Tiger Claw thugs. I suddenly realized that for all the aesthetics this was definitely a place owned and operated by the TC. For the TC. I sighed. Of course the girl that lived on the same floor as June and I had some TC connections. Of course she played at a TC club. I shook it off. It wasn't like her wasn't just as bad, and we hung there a lot. In the end we did find a table and not a booth that we were all able to fit around with some difficulties. I hope the music is good. Malcolm eventually grumbled to us and I nodded. The seating was kinda shit, and I had noticed the prices at the bar as we were searching for a seat. Expensive. Don't worry about it, Malcolm. This is a celebration. So get whatever you want, I'll cover it. I told him, and that earned me a happy smile and Malcolm going from being a little grumpy to looking around in a much better mood. Ichi, what's up? Hiromi asked and I looked over to him. He was sort of placing himself behind a pillar. Almost hiding. Just. I know some of these guys. Like that guy over there is Katana Hiroshi. He said, pointing to a man sitting at one of the booths with a katana sitting between his legs ready to be used. Okay? Are they gonna attack you or something? Well, no. But I made deliveries for some of these guys during the war, you know? I mean, they might recognize me, and with Shobo-sama getting flatlined and me leaving. I don't know, it's nothing, I guess I'm just being awkward. You know, Ichi. As much as I kinda hate it. If you want to join the TC again, you could always talk to June Alpha, despite how gross the words felt on my tongue. Ichi was part of Section 9. I didn't want to give him up to some wannabe Yakuza thugs. No. He answered instantly firmly. I won't do that again. I'll work as transport for myself if I have to before I go back in. He said, and I blinked in surprise at that. I didn't realize you were so. Motoko. After everything I went through during the war, I was basically forgotten about afterwards once Jotaro died. Ichi said, and I could feel his frustration. If it wasn't for you dragging us into the scav raids, I would have had to start as a fucking bottom-rung shitboy again. Running drinks to people and stuff. No thanks. Hey Ichi, go get us some drinks. Malcolm, being the best friend that he was, instantly chimed in. Hiromi and I were soon laughing as the two boys fought each other. An hour later it was time. The stage lights had shifted and there were some people up there setting up actual equipment. Finally I would get to see Rockaboy Neighbor's set. I recognized her instantly. She was basically wearing the same style that she had when I saw her on the elevator. She stepped out with a pretty expensive Orpheon. They made some of the highest quality guitars. I only recognized it because I had seen them at the music shop. They were the ones behind bulletproof glass. I was instantly jealous. "This is Violent Hemorrhage," she called out as her band all started playing, and I nodded. It was good. Her guitar skill was real. I grumped. She attacked the guitar. She opened her mouth and instantly I was kinda disappointed. Artificial. Of course. She had throat chrome. The voice that came out wasn't real. It was a digital-controlled auto-tune. I could hear where the chrome altered her voice on the fly, pitch correcting. I don't think Rockabye Neighbor was very good at singing. I think she had probably gotten the chrome to try and overcome her issue. "Burn it all," Malcolm called out, shouting along with the song as she repeated the chorus. The crowd was enjoying it. Although as I looked around I noticed some people obviously noticed the issue and weren't getting as involved. I felt bad. She played well. The song was catchy. Her band was good. Her singing just had some issues. "What's wrong?" Hiromi asked, pushing herself against me and speaking into my ear so I could hear her over the music. I returned the favor, leaning in. "The singing is artificial and the front woman is struggling. If it wasn't for the chrome she would sound pretty awful," I told her, and Hiromi frowned, listening but not seemingly catching it. Made sense. If it wasn't for Rockabye telling me so much about music I wouldn't have noticed it either. I shook it off. Being picky and not enjoying music just because it wasn't perfect was something that always annoyed me. So I ignored it, just getting into the rhythm and enjoying the lyrics for what they said. "Hey Motoko. So when are we going on another raid anyways?" Malcolm asked, suddenly startling me. "I could use some extra eddies for the Caliburn when I get one." "Wait, you're still trying to get that supercar?" Hiromi asked, sounding amused. "Are you sure?" "Listen, just because I got shot doesn't change that it's my dream car, Hiromi," he answered with a shrug. "I mean, I had to spend some money on the healing that Dr. Vic gave me, so I figure an extra gig will help." I don't think I'm hitting any scav dens for a while." I admitted. My voice was mostly cut off from the thumping of the next band getting up and starting to sing. Annoyed, I quickly called my chums, throwing all of us into a conference call. "I'm not going to raid the scavs again for a while. I'm hoping that if I stop here, they will just assume it was all the work of the TC and let it go so they won't retaliate." "Wait, but what about our eddies?" Ichi asked. "We were using the raids as our income, Motoko." "Forget that for a second. Why are we worried about scavs retaliating? We'll just kill them all, right?" Malcolm added. I shook my head. I let my anger get the better of me after the apartment was attacked, guys. It's one thing to raid a new den every once in a while. The remaining scavs won't even care, but what I did was hit them really hard over and over. If they think I'll come after them next, they will try to remove me. Or you, or our family. Motoko. You don't have to be afraid. We'll beat them if they try it." Hiromi offered, and I smiled at her, but I shook my head. I can't just think like a child about this. I do want to destroy the scavs. Make no mistake. I'll still raid them when possible, but I'm going to take a break. Give them space, let them think things have gone quiet. And all the while I'm going to plot how to completely destroy them. Utterly. I said with all the conviction I could muster. "All right. We can take it easy from that then. But what about it?" He started asking, but I cut him off. "Right. Eddies. I didn't forget, Ichi. I know how important it is for you to have some income. Just because I'll avoid scavs for a bit, doesn't mean we don't have other targets we can hit. I can still do some gigs for Wakako that might end up with lots of loot. I promise it'll be okay. I just have to balance what we do so retaliation isn't smacking us in the face constantly." Yeah, that's fair. I don't want scavs hitting my home or something either." Ichi agreed, and I nodded. "Right. That's enough of that stuff. Let's enjoy the show. We are celebrating tonight." To Malcolm. Well, that was an interesting night," I muttered as we walked out of the club. The live bands had all finished up and it was getting late. I was feeling sort of tense, but not tired. Maybe I should go do some gigs? My week of peace was over. Even if with Malcolm's shooting it hadn't lasted the whole week. going home?" Hiromi asked, and I shrugged as I turned around. Hiromi was wearing more black recently. It was still street kid chic in a lot of ways, but she had bought a new jacket that was all black with just some of her favorite green and lining around it. Which, now that I thought about it, was probably a custom job. "Well, we should go for a ride then. I'm finally free for the weekend. Motoko, let's go on a drive," she called out, thrusting a fist into the air. "Sure," I agreed easily as Hiromi smiled bright and happy as she ran over and grabbed my arm. "Come on, my Kusangi is parked over here, you can drive since I know how tetchy you get about drunk driving," Hiromi offered, and Hiromi and the rest of my chums had a few things to drink tonight. "It's okay, we can take mine," I offered, pulling her in a different direction. Of course, only after I heard Hiromi make a noise that was similar to a tea kettle overflowing did the two brain cells in my head finally connect. I had bought the Kusanagi right before everything happened. I hadn't used it much after the attack because I needed my gear and the quadra was better protected. I had promised to take Hiromi out when I finally got a Kusanagi. I hadn't told her I had bought a Kusanagi yet. "Oops," I whispered as I turned to my chum who was practically bouncing. You bought one," she called out happily, grabbing me tightly and refusing to let go. "Yeah. It's not a Mizuchi either, so it's let's go. I demand a ride, Motoko. You should have told me you were buying a Kusanagi. After what happened to Malcolm as well. They probably overcharged you too. You are so bad with money. I would have helped," Hiromi rambled as she pulled forwards. Funnily enough, we ended up walking past my bike in her rush since she didn't know where it was. I adjusted her course and dragged her over, and she instantly started looking over the bike, hands wandering as she checked things. "Someone messed with the brakes," she called out, and I laughed. "Yeah, me. They were trash when I bought it. I had to replace them," I told her, and she glared at me. "What?" "That's the sort of thing you can demand a discount for when buying something, Motoko. Did you haggle the price down because of the bad brakes?" The urge to look away and whistle struck me, but I remained firm. Hiromi noticed anyway. "Ugh. You are the worst with money forever." "Yeah, that is true. What did Motoko do this time?" Ichi said as he and Malcolm walked over. "Oh, Ichi, look. Motoko bought a Kusanagi. Without telling anyone, and she had to do repairs on it. I bet she paid full price." "I don't want to say how much I paid for it now, because someone will yell at me," I answered mechanically. Malcolm was just laughing a bit as Ichi and Hiromi both teamed up to yell at me for wasting money. "Banned from spending money forever," Hiromi yelled at me with a pointed finger. A bit later, after finally calming my best chum down, I was driving down the road with Hiromi gripped onto my back tightly as my Kusanagi took a turn. "It feels so weird compared to my bike," Hiromi called out. "The lack of a back seat isn't as comfortable. But it gives me an extra." Hiromi's voice lowered at the end until I couldn't hear her. I would have asked her to repeat it, but I was instantly braking a moment after to avoid some arsehole driver who cut into my lane. A waved middle finger in his direction settled that matter as I put myself back into traffic. Hiromi of course wasn't done. Practically standing up on the Kusanagi, she was flipping off the driver and cussing at the top of her lungs. I just snorted and took a gentle right on the next street to move away from the other car. "Why'd we turn? Motoko, take me back, I haven't finished yet," she demanded, dropping back down from where she had been practically standing on the seat. "It's okay, Hiromi. Besides, I'd rather spend the ride with you than dealing with some gonk," I told her happily, and she instantly settled back down and wrapped herself back around my back. Hiromi and I drove around the city for a long while that night, just enjoying the roads. Honestly, my Kusanagi was a much smoother ride than the Mizuchi that Hiromi had. Without the overturning that came with that variant, the much smoother and deeper rumble of the engine was nice instead of ear-splitting. In the end, we ended up on the mountain paths in Westbrook, and there I let it out, letting my bike roar over the roads with Hiromi hollering her enjoyment into my ear. I woke up the next morning with the grabby Hiromi gripping onto me. We had a sleepover again at my place cause Hiromi didn't want to just go home and be alone. I gently tried to escape her grip, but that wasn't happening, so I was stuck with nothing to do but think. No. I shook that away. I'd been doing that too much. Overthinking. I always had a path forward. I just needed to improve my stats. Body and reflex first. I'd been napping on both of them too long, and both were easy enough to grind out. I just needed to dedicate the time for it. To stop coasting and start grinding out everything again. So I relaxed and just waited a while, dozing a bit as I waited for Hiromi to wake up and let me go. Toko? Hiromi mumbled a bit as she finally started waking up a while later. Hey Hiromi. Morning. Mornin'. She mumbled back again and then she just buried herself into my shoulder and mumbled something nonsensical. I laughed a little at how cute she was being. Hey, I'm going to hit the gym, and then a gun range. Yeah, a gun range after. You want to join me? Get some exercise? She made an interested noise before suddenly opening her eyes. Yeah. I want to see. I mean go. I want to go. Cool. Come on, let's get up and get some good in us then. Hiromi, you okay? You keep stopping your workout. I called out as I did another squat with the weights on my shoulders. I was sweating like crazy at this point considering how much effort I was putting into the exercise. I wanted that body 10. Give me the perfect abs. I demanded. But my chum kept stopping and staring. Hiromi, I wasn't squatting all that much weight. You could do this even. Well, at least a few times, and you don't exercise. It wasn't that surprising. I grunted as I rose up again. My core burned from the crunches I had finished before, and my thighs felt great considering how long I had been doing this. Sure, I hated the pain, but the XP. Do it for XP. She said, and that was all that came out of her mouth for a bit before she shook herself. I think I'm done is all. She offered, standing up from barbells she had been using for like a minute. Hiromi, you can't get gains that way. I shook it off though. I had sort of surprised her about all this after all. Okay. Let me finish this, and we'll get a shower before hitting the range? Hiromi nodded her head up and down a little too fast. I didn't know Hiromi was that into shooting. Maybe something we could do when we hang out now? Go to a gun range? So Hiromi didn't like gun ranges. We had gone to a nearby gun range I found online. I had spent a lot of money on ammo so we could shoot as much as we wanted, and so I could train my reflexes. The gun range had electronic targets and difficulty modes. So I had ramped that sucker up and started training my Lexington, getting a real workout for the first time since I had picked it up. As I shot target after target, as fast as I could. I had already started getting alerts, simply from how many fast twitch shots I had been making. Hiromi wasn't having as much fun. You okay, Hiromi? I asked, and she gave me a wilted smile. She wasn't nearly as accurate as I was, and was struggling with the targets. I knew exactly what was happening. Hiromi was comparing herself to me. I cancelled my targets, and walked over to her aisle, moving up behind her as I pressed myself against her back. Like this, I told her, as I reached up and overlaid my hands on hers. You are doing fine, but you are pulling the trigger too hard. I helped her pull the trigger back and the bullet hit on target. I think your chrome is giving you trouble. Yeah, my hands feel a little different. I didn't realize it was messing with my aim this much, she said, sounding frustrated. It's okay. That just means it's a good thing we hit the range. So let's practice those pulls so we don't have to worry about it. Gentle pulls, there we go. I told her as she managed to hit the target again with a smooth shot. I didn't get much shooting done after that, as I helped Hiromi work on a quick draw using my knowledge, but the way her face was lit up compared to how sour it had been at first was worth it. Eventually good things had to end, and Hiromi headed home. Her parents wanted to see her on the weekend after all. I ended up turning around and going right back to the range. I had thousands of rounds to pump through. I ran through the gamut of my skills to get more XP. Quick drawing, rapid firing, high-speed adjustment using the electronic targets. I did it all. And reflex XP started flowing in. It was actually a relief. I had done a lot of shooting on gigs, but hadn't really been getting much XP for it. I guess I just needed to keep actually pushing myself instead of just doing a few shots and being done. I worked through until I had to stop to cool off my Lexington. Then packing up all the ammo I still had and heading home.